juicy.
Ura versus Ura and Hakuri nerfs. A new baddie has arrived, and Twitter is in absolute shambles. Kagurabachi chapter 88 is here. Let's just fucking get into it.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
Coming right off the back of chapter 87, we are back with Izuru, who is dealing with this dude who opened the barrier for the Hishaku in the previous chapter to gain entry to where they are right now. Now, originally, I thought Izuru absolutely murked this kid right here, but it actually turns out that he only restrained him. I would assume that this is going to be for later interrogation purposes. Now, in the last video, I mentioned how people weren't picked up by the detection in the barrier for the Kamanabe HQ, but now that they are, because this guy actually mentions that there are 5 intruders in the West Wing 5th level, so it's possible that my earlier observations might have been a mistake on Hokuzonu's part, or it's simply that the barrier is better at detecting people the lower they get, so they can keep a real close eye on the Swordmaster. Anyway, Izuru tells our sensory dude here to contact the elite troops. Now, these folks we saw were actually mentioned in chapter 80, however now Hokuzono has added a few new folks into the mix. Notably, he's using that Oda approach, and he is using silhouette, so it's likely that these outlines may not even be close to the final product and designs of these characters when they finally enter the manga, or they might not even enter the manga altogether. However, this sensory guy remarks to Izuru that they have not yet found all the informants, but Izuru tells him it doesn't matter, issue the commands regardless, we will watch how they behave. Then going on to keep all of the lower ranks in place, basically, as they were ordered in chapter 81, because remember, all of the lower ranks were ordered to stand still and keep the distance from each other because anyone could just turn into a bomb from the pine tree dude here. However, this order tells us a couple of possible outcomes. Crazy crackpot schizophrenic stuff going on here. Number 1, Izuru is actually suspicious that a higher elite fighter or fighters is a Hishaku informant. Number 2, Izuru himself may be the informant and is ordering other informants to gather around the Hishaku to cause more chaos here. Now, we already know that he doesn't like Chihiro and may be aligned with the Hishaku. I don't know. I'm suspicious of everyone. Either way, I'm letting y'all know my suspicions are tingling with this dude. I may well be wrong, but I'm putting stocks in this dude being a double agent. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below, whether I'm just chatting wham here or if I'm being serious. Anyways, we cut back over to Yora, who is now face to face with Ura and Hakuri. Yora first's reaction here is complete and utter disappointment to see that Ura is actually indeed alive, because remember, the last thing Yora heard about Ura was that Samura had killed him, and that was back in chapter 59. Since then, he has been under the impression that Ura is dead. We've not seen him gain any information about Chihiro being alive either, but considering that Chihiro interacted with Kuguri, Toto, and Hirohiko, it's probably safe to say that Yora does know that Chihiro is in fact alive and well, but he does show frustration with Samura due to this fact that Ura is indeed alive. But Ura and Hakuri ready for an attack. Now, Ura gets a gauge on his surroundings as well as taking stocks on his team and their firepower. And it's little moments like this where you can really see that military experience in him coming through before engaging the enemy. He stands his ground, he notes his surroundings, and he notes how many enemies there are, and then finally he gathers intel on Hakuri's firepower, and then he makes his plan of attack. But before we get into all of that, we do need to talk about Hakuri for a second, because Hakuri, much like Samura, presents a unique narrative problem right now, and it's that his power set makes him really fucking overpowered for our side narratively. Being able to teleport anyone or anything that he has touched into its own separate private dimension is pretty fucking useful and pretty damn insane to have narratively for our good guys. He was pivotal in part of the plan before Samura's portrayal here. However, Hakuri has let us know something really interesting, that since his coma, he's been nerfed. He has been nerfed. The new patch notes dropped and he has been nerfed. He can cast ISO every so often, but he does need to rest it, and he can still teleport, but all of the previous items and people that he has registered to the storehouse are no longer registered. Now, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm okay with this. I'm completely okay with this. Some of you Hakuri fans may not be okay, and that's completely understandable, but let me try and ease your doubts here. I think Hokuzono recognized that Hakuri's sorcery was a problem for the narrative, because it is strange, it is powerful, and you know, you could definitely write yourself into a corner, because at a certain point, it's why do we have these problems when Hakuri or Samura could just either cut them down or teleport them out. It's that simple, right? So I think Hokuzono recognized that Hakuri's sorcery was a problem for the narrative and had him taken out of the story and then brought him him back, but heavily nerfed him. And it's done that in a way that doesn't feel cheap or feels as if he's robbing us of something. Well, some of you might feel robbed here, but I can't do nothing about that. But instead, I think it just adds more stakes to Hakuri's character here and his powers now, which I'm all for, because he can't just willy-nilly teleport people around. He can't just willy-nilly ESO people into walls. He's got to think about the ability usage, and he's got to think about persevering and saving himself, because he is an important core fighter now. Anyways, the two who was chasing Ura in the last couple of chapters finally reach him, and before they even do reach him, they are just cut down from the ceiling as a square chunk is cut out, and in comes Kiri. Now, you might be sat here hitting the fucking Leo meme, the little click. I can't whistle. And anyway, it's because Kiri has actually been shown to us twice now. Twice in the series and twice in this video. By the way, like and subscribe. We're almost at 38,000. We're trying to get 40k. You know, like and subscribe. Now, Kiri was shown in chapter 80, and naturally she set Twitter on fire. In fact, as of the time of me scripting and recording this video, she's still trending on Twitter. Gooner's gonna goon. Anyways, it turns out Kiri and Uraha have a past. Now, you see, in chapter 65, Itsuo Shirakai was name dropped, and 5 chapters later in chapter 70 was actually shown to us. Itsuo is the creator of the EI White Purity style, a sword style that has been incredibly relevant throughout this arc and pretty much just since chapter 50 essentially here. Anyways, it turns out that Kiri here is actually the granddaughter of Itsuo, who belongs to Izaru's squad. Now, there's a couple of theories going around right now already that Izaru is actually the son of Itsuo, making Kiri here the daughter of Izaru. So I guess you could see the similarities here. I know Kagurabachi will seems to think this, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, it turns out when Uraha and Samura were under Itsuo's tutelage here, he left him in charge of taking care of Kiri. According to Uraha, Itsuo left him half dead 4 times. Now, back in chapter 47, we actually see Uraha with these scars, so it's entirely possible that it was actually Itsuo who gave him these scars. Anyways, we do get this little montage of Uraha and Samura looking after Kiri, which I'm just gonna say, what the fuck? Samura literally left his own daughter to go and babysit Kiri here. It's getting incredibly hard for me to defend this dude. Speaking of which, by the way, shameless plug, go watch my Samura video. Deep dived into Samura's character. You'll enjoy it. Anyways, Uraha lets us know that Itsuo has been missing and is probably up in the mountains somewhere, but Kiri lets us know that this dude has actually been texting her to let her know that he is okay. And there's actually a rivalry between Kiri and Itsuo here. She wants him to live a long life because she eventually wants to kill him, and it's revealed that Itsuo is actually just a massive misogynistic motherfucker here. He doesn't believe that women should be wielding the blade. Hello, base department. If my wife is watching, I'm just for legal reasons, that was a joke. Please don't fucking murder me. That was a joke. Okay. Anyways, the Hishaku have been watching for this entire time, watching these 3 introducing themselves and all of that good shit, and it's here the quote-unquote strongest team member, as mentioned in the last chapter, makes him move. And it's here she gets absolutely fucking decimated by Uraha, who roundhouses her through a fucking wall, and it's here that we get to see Uraha activating his sorcery. However, there's a few notes that should be pointed out here. 1, this Hishaku member actually blocks the kick from Uraha right here. 2, when Uraha looks to where she would have been landed through this wall, she's not there. And 3, this dude notes how the kick landed, which might be a hint to a sorcery or something else. Like, why would you take note that that landed? I don't know, it's interesting to me, we'll see. Anyways, Uraha activates his sorcery known as Koen, or in English, Crimson Recital, and it's here that Mr. Bald Hishaku activates his own sorcery, which is a bunch of giant demons' heads that he then fires at. Now, originally, when I first watched this on stream, when I first read this on stream, I thought these giant demon heads were actually Uraha's sorcery. Really confused me. My head is fried lately, I'll be honest with you. However, Uraha goes on the offensive here, as the sorcery that he's using seems to sort of intensify. These markings on his face grow once more on his face. Now, what I love about this the most is that the hints for Uraha's sorcery have been in our faces the entire time. Like, we might have just been thinking that this is makeup, but no, this is just a straight reference to Sage Mode Naruto here, I guess. Now, Uraha uses the EI White style and flies through this demon that is summoned by Mr. Bald Hishaku. Now, this is going to be a rare weeb power scaling moment, so don't get used to it, but I do think that this is relevant for the story right now, I believe. Now, Uraha's sorcery, as described by Yora here, allows Uraha to fortify 1 ability at a time. Now, the wording's a bit weird here, but this essentially just means 1 thing at a time that he's doing. The first instance of him fortifying an ability is this kick right here. After this kick, the markings recede. The second instance is right here when he uses the EI White style against this demon and clash with Yora. We see the markings intensify and then they recede afterwards. Now, Yora notes how his speed is intimidating, but he has lost his destructive force that he had before. The kick equals destructive force being buffed, the slash equals speed being buffed. Now we've got all of that out the way, I think it's worth noting that Uraha's EI White style is fast as fuck. How fast? It's only slightly slower than Samura when they are both not using an enchanted blade. How do we know? Because in chapter 55, Uraha contends with Samura, and Samura ends up slicing the top of his hair off right here, meaning Uraha is just a tad bit slower than Samura here without an enchanted blade. And now Uraha is actually buffing that speed to be even faster, but Yora is able to see that speed and react fast enough so that he and his team are able to produce a sword from this book, which is very reminiscent of Crollo from Hunter x Hunter, which is very similar to what I said in my previous Yora theory video. Go watch that also. But he's able to clash with and block Uraha's speed right here. Now, I believe this very simple interaction and the pages after us give us a lot of information, so I do want to break all this down. Now, as I've already mentioned, Yora is freaky fast here, and it's not something that we've not seen before here. Yora was actually able to contend with Chihiro way back in chapter 31 when Chihiro was using Cloud Gouger. At the time, Yora was even able to completely stop Chihiro's attack right here. Now, I believe it's not speed that Yora has, but rather future sight or fortune telling, because Chihiro notes at this point that he's not using sorcery, so it's potential that Yora already used his sorcery to see the future and know what Chihiro was going to do. You see, since Yora has been in the story, there has been a constant theme, and he's been constantly 3 steps ahead of everyone. His first interaction with Samura, he constantly talked about the future and how he was there to deliver a prophecy. There has been a constant theme of him knowing the future, planning ahead, and delivering prophecies. Now, there is a constant air of knowledge on future events which seem to come into fruition consistently to Yora's planning here. Now, right at the end of this chapter, Yora says, "We have a card, the death match." Now, this set me down a fucking rabbit hole. I'm just going to be honest with you, this set me down a rabbit hole. So I started searching up tarot cards and I arrived at the death tarot card. Now, according to Wikipedia, quote, "According to the Eden Gray and other authors on the subject, it is uncommon that this card actually represents a physical death. Rather, it typically implies an end, possibly of a relationship or interest, and therefore an increased sense of self-awareness. In fact, Gray interprets this card as a change of thinking from an old way into a new way. The horse Death is riding is stepping over a prone king, which symbolizes that not even royalty can stop change. The card drawn in reverse can be interpreted as stagnation and the inability to move or change according to Gray. Now, in this specific case, Yora or the Swordmaster would be death. The sickle or scythe that they are wielding would be the Shinoichi, and those dying around them would be the people of Japan or Shikoku. Now, bear in mind, this is very, very much a crackpot theory, but the details of this card somewhat fit the narrative of what is going on within the series. Yora seemingly constantly has knowledge of the future, and he has a belief in a god of some sort, as we saw in the last chapter, and he even tempted fate with a coin flip last chapter, and is aware that the future isn't set in stone. Much is the case with tarot card readings. They're not events that are set in stone, but rather possible outcomes of the future to come. And Yora is just taking the path to make those outcomes more and more likely. Now, none of this explains Yora's eyes seemingly just turning black, exactly like the Swordmasters here, but the chapter does close out with Yora and Uraha facing off and Kiri getting ready to attack. Now, I've got to say, I wasn't expecting Uraha and Yora to actually fight here. In fact, I wasn't expecting Yora to fight at all so soon. However, I am not confident in the survival odds of the combatants here. I'm genuinely starting to think that there might be losses on both sides because, yeah, Yora seems to be strong here, but, like, I'm not sure how he's going to contend with Uraha and Kiri and then Hakuri, who's a good support sorcerer. So either way, banger of a chapter. I'm looking forward to whatever Hokuno has in store for us next week, but that's everything from me. Let me know what you thought of the video and the chapter in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. We are closing in on 38k. We're trying to get to 40k, and as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love, big fucking kisses, peace.